there's a short life in
Why do you think that is? What the creative side is?
Well, because losing out money, you got to take. You're going through so much to try and deal with life.
Well, the things that I experienced with him were monster-like. That stuff almost destroyed my life.
The courtroom was electric with tension, the kind of weight that makes the air feel heavier, every breath sharper. On the 10th day of Sean Diddy Combs' federal trial, a trial already saturated with scandals and allegations that have shaken the entertainment industry to its core, came a twist no one could have predicted. The judge uttered a name, and the world seemed to stop. Tom Hanks. Hollywood's golden beacon of morality, America's dad, the man who has been synonymous with decency and kindness for decades, was called to the stand. It was a moment that redefined shock.
Dishonest, violent, horrible. A promiscuous swinger who lied to and cheated on multiple partners. Incredibly, that's how Sean Diddy Combs' own lawyers described the billionaire music mogul, currently facing serious trafficking charges in a New York court.
Hanks' testimony wasn't just unexpected, it was seismic. What he revealed wasn't simply a personal anecdote or a passing connection to Combs. It was a dark, surreal expose of hidden rituals, manipulative power dynamics, and an unspoken side of celebrity culture that the public rarely gets a glimpse of. His account painted an eerily vivid picture of a relationship with Combs that unfolded in private, away from the red carpets and flashing cameras. Hanks described years of bizarre, unsettling interactions. Shared baths in marble tubs, cryptic late-night phone calls, secluded retreats where surveillance cameras were hidden in every corner. These weren't rumors, these were facts, recounted with the precision and clarity of a man who had spent years grappling with what he had witnessed. This wasn't just another celebrity taking the stand to add flair to an already headline-grabbing trial. No, this was an unraveling of layers so tightly wound around the mystique of Sean Combs that even those closest to him could only guess at the truths buried beneath. Hanks detailed how their interactions began innocently, with casual conversations at high-profile events like the Met Gala, only for them to spiral into something far more complex and disturbing. Combs, he said, had drawn him into a world unlike anything Hanks had ever encountered. A world of rituals that seemed harmless on the surface, but were charged with deeper, more sinister undertones.
Card.
What is that? What do you mean by that?
You give up your ability, your right to being a man. A man don't take it, a man gives it. So when you give up that man card, you don't get that back.
Are you saying what I think you're saying?
No, I'm saying what I'm saying.
One of the most chilling elements of Hanks' testimony was his description of the baths. These weren't ordinary spa moments or casual indulgences. Hanks painted a picture of a calculated ritual, something Diddy described as a way to cleanse the soul. But as Hanks recounted, these baths weren't about relaxation or spirituality. They were about control. The secrecy, the candles, the whispered philosophies about legacy and power. It all created an atmosphere that felt more like a psychological experiment than a meeting of friends. And then there were the cameras. Everywhere Hanks went in Diddy's private spaces, there seemed to be hidden eyes, recording every move, every word. When questioned, Combs would reportedly dismiss the surveillance as a form of art, a way to preserve history. But as Hanks testified, it felt more like leverage, a way to ensure silence and compliance. What made Hanks' testimony even more compelling and damning was his willingness to admit his own complicity. He didn't claim to be an innocent bystander. He acknowledged that he had ignored red flags, rationalized bizarre behavior, and stayed silent for years, all because he didn't want to confront the possibility that someone he once admired was capable of such manipulation. This wasn't just a condemnation of Combs. It was a reckoning for Hanks himself and for an entire industry that thrives on secrecy and silence.
Are you surprised by the evidence that's already coming out in the criminal trial?
No, I'm not surprised. I experienced some of those things. Witnessed violence.
The revelations didn't stop there. Hanks spoke of a retreat in Malibu where he and a handful of other elite figures were invited to what was described as a weekend of reflection and introspection. But what he encountered was something far more orchestrated. Phones were confiscated upon arrival, and the house was wired with hidden cameras, capturing footage that was later played back on monitors as if to remind the attendees that they were always being watched. Hanks described it as a performance of power, a chilling display of surveillance and control that left him questioning everything he thought he knew about the man he once considered a friend. What's perhaps most disturbing is that Hanks' testimony is just one piece of a larger puzzle. The trial itself has been a Pandora's box of allegations against Combs, ranging from human trafficking and racketeering to emotional and psychological abuse. victims have come forward with harrowing stories of being coerced into freakoffs, elaborate and orchestrated performances allegedly organized by Combs and his team. These events, described in lawsuits and eyewitness accounts, were reportedly stocked with substances, lighting setups, and hidden cameras, creating an environment where participants were stripped of their agency and subjected to humiliating and degrading acts. Prosecutors have argued that these freak-offs were more than just parties. They were a central component of a larger criminal enterprise designed to exploit and manipulate.
Referred to me as Wild King Nights. And what a Wild King Night was when him and a guest would go to a hotel room or be at his home, his bedroom, and they would have intimate gatherings. I would have to go and prep that hotel room, which consisted of baby oil Astroglide.
Hanks's testimony, while not directly tied to these allegations, adds a layer of credibility to the broader narrative of control and secrecy. His account of being drawn into Diddy's orbit, only to realize the extent to which power was wielded as a weapon, echoes the experiences of other witnesses who have come forward. And it raises urgent questions. How many others have stayed silent? How many have rationalized their complicity, just as Hanks admitted to doing? And most importantly, how deep does this go? This isn't just a scandal, it's a reckoning. A reckoning for Sean Combs, for the entertainment industry, and for a culture that has allowed power to operate without accountability for far too long. Tom Hanks' testimony may have been unexpected, but it has become a turning point, a moment that forces us to confront the uncomfortable truths lurking in the shadows of celebrity culture. And as the trial continues, one thing is clear: the stories are far from over and the consequences are just beginning.
How many people came through his orbit? How many people could this have happened to? And how did he get away with it for so long?
As the dust began to settle on Tom Hanks' jaw-dropping testimony, the world's attention shifted sharply to the man at the center of it all, Sean "Diddy" Combs. If Hanks' revelations cracked open a window into the mogul's shadowy world, the broader allegations against him blew the doors off entirely. What began as whispers of misconduct has now become a roaring tidal wave of accusations spanning decades, with victims, insiders, and even former confidants stepping forward to reveal a pattern of domination, manipulation, and unchecked power. This is no longer just a scandal, it's a reckoning of monumental proportions for one of the most influential figures in the entertainment industry. To understand the full weight of these allegations, we have to go back, farther than Tom Hanks' chilling accounts of surveillance and rituals, farther than the retreats and hidden cameras. Diddy's legacy has always been one of opulence and control, but behind the gilded facade lies a history that many now claim is riddled with darkness. One of the most damning threads in this unraveling narrative is the long trail of lawsuits and allegations tied to the infamous freak-off, private gatherings that were allegedly anything but innocent. Described in court filings as elaborate, orchestrated performances, these events were said to involve hand-picked attendees, carefully curated environments, and an unsettling emphasis on secrecy. According to multiple accounts, participants were often flown in under the guise of professional opportunities, only to find themselves subjected to situations that blurred lines and stripped them of their autonomy.
Did you ever have the opportunity where you got invited and you said no to it?
Hell yeah.
What was the consequences when you said no?
Puffy invited me for weeks, asking me to come and teach him how to, wanted me to be his acting coach for a while. Go there and he's sitting around just looking. I'm like, okay, what's the material you want to work on? He's just looking at it.
The details are as shocking as they are specific. These events, often held in luxury hotels or Diddy's private residences, were reportedly set up with meticulous precision. Eyewitnesses and victims have described rooms pre-stocked with supplies, including scented oils, special lighting, and even intravenous fluids to help attendees recover from what prosecutors have called prolonged physical exertion. And yet, these preparations weren't just about creating an atmosphere. They were allegedly tools of control designed to manipulate and disorient, making it harder for those involved to push back or even process what was happening. One victim, speaking anonymously, described the experience as like stepping into a movie where you're the only one who doesn't know the script.
Will you help me? I want to hear your music. So I come over there and I play the music. And he's sitting there, just looking at me, like waiting. Okay. So then my assistant was like, he wants to hang out with you next week. And I was like, for what? He's like, I think he's trying to you. That's what my assistant said. And I was like, oh, okay. Now I get it. So now no more communication.
But perhaps the most disturbing element of these allegations is the role Diddy himself is said to have played. Far from being a passive observer, he is accused of orchestrating every detail from the selection of attendees to the filming of activities without their explicit consent. Prosecutors have argued that these recordings weren't just for personal use, they were leverage, a way to ensure silence and compliance. He knew how to make you feel special, like you were part of something exclusive, one former insider revealed.
It was like, wow, for Diddy? What? You know, that was a person that I looked up to, he was a mogul, and I listened to all the artists that he made superstars. And so to have a chance to be able to be signed to him, it was amazing. It was like, oh my God, I'm here. I finally did it.
And it's not just victims who have come forward. Industry insiders, former staff members, and even past collaborators have begun to speak out, painting a picture of a man who used his immense power to bend others to his will. Among the most vocal has been R&B singer Cassie Ventura, who filed a civil lawsuit against Diddy in 2023, accusing him of years of emotional and physical trauma. Her case was settled within hours, but it opened the floodgates for others to tell their stories. Cassie's lawsuit detailed a relationship in which she felt trapped by Diddy's controlling behavior, including being coerced into participating in activities she later described as deeply degrading. Cassie's claims are far from isolated. A wave of additional lawsuits and testimonies has followed, each adding new layers to the growing mountain of evidence against Diddy. From former employees who allege they were forced to facilitate these events to artists who claim their careers were derailed after refusing to comply with his demands, the stories are as varied as they are damning. In one particularly shocking case, a former contestant on Diddy's reality show Making the Band alleged that what was pitched as a career-making opportunity quickly turned into a nightmare of coercion and exploitation. These accounts, taken together, paint a portrait of a man who wielded his influence not just to build an empire, but to control and silence those around him.
He cornered me. And then he asked me, with his arm up, he asked me, "How you doing?" I'm kind of like, wow, what the heck? Very uncomfortable. And then he rubbed his hand down my breast. He said, "If you need anything at all, you let me know."
The lawsuits against Sean Diddy Combs aren't just numerous, they're staggering in their scope, painting a decades-long pattern of exploitation reaching back to the 990s. One of the most shocking claims comes from a former aspiring artist who alleges that Diddy manipulated him into a humiliating situation during the early 2000s. According to court documents, the artist was promised a life-changing deal with Bad Boy Records, only to find himself coerced into a series of private meetings that escalated into deeply unsettling encounters. The lawsuit alleges that Diddy used veiled threats about the artist's career to ensure compliance, a tactic echoed in multiple other cases.
Have lost businesses because I don't bend over in that way. I don't compromise. I don't play roles. I don't kiss a man. I don't do that because the man card means everything.
Another high-profile plaintiff, a former employee of Diddy's production company, has accused him of fostering a toxic work environment rife with intimidation. This individual, who worked closely with Diddy's inner circle, claims in their lawsuit that they were forced to facilitate events and activities that left them feeling complicit in behavior they described as calculated and predatory. They allege that Diddy's team was well aware of his actions, but turned a blind eye, fearing retaliation or losing their positions. This case has raised broader questions about the complicity of those in his orbit and whether a culture of silence enabled his behavior for so long. In another bombshell revelation, a group of plaintiffs has filed a joint lawsuit alleging that Diddy's infamous freakoffs were part of a larger orchestrated scheme involving multiple staff members and associates. These plaintiffs allege that they were essentially recruited under false pretenses, believing they were attending networking events or private industry parties, only to find themselves in environments where their boundaries were repeatedly violated. The lawsuit details how attendees were reportedly monitored at all times, often surrounded by Diddy's security team, making it nearly impossible to leave without his approval. One plaintiff likened the experience to being trapped in a gilded cage, where luxury masked the underlying menace.
That was all the people that went to the puffy parties. That was all the people that did all those things thinking that there was never going to be a consequence for what they were doing. Got punked out and pimped out by some greater desire. You shouldn't have a greater desire than being a man. So I believe that's a big problem with a lot of the actors out there because they get fluid. And next thing you know, once you go fluid,
The lawsuits have also brought to light accusations of financial manipulation. Several former collaborators have alleged that Diddy used financial leverage to control them, withholding payments or renegotiating contracts in ways that left them financially dependent on him. One former artist claimed that Diddy weaponized money to keep them in line, using promises of financial stability as a way to silence dissent. These allegations have sparked renewed scrutiny of Diddy's business practices and how power dynamics in the entertainment industry are often exploited to silence victims. Perhaps one of the most chilling lawsuits involves allegations from a former security contractor who worked for Diddy in the late 2010s. This individual claims that they were tasked with overseeing the logistics of private events, including ensuring that all surveillance equipment was operational. In their testimony, they describe being asked to destroy certain tapes and documents, actions they now believe were intended to cover up incriminating evidence. These lawsuits, spanning years and involving victims from diverse backgrounds, reveal a pattern of behavior that goes beyond individual incidents. They point to a systematic use of power, wealth, and influence to exploit, manipulate, and silence those who dare to stand in Diddy's way. What's especially troubling is the sheer number of people involved: assistants, bodyguards, legal teams, whose complicity allowed this alleged pattern to continue unchecked for so long. It raises a haunting question: how much of this was hidden in plain sight, and how many people were too afraid to speak out until now?
This stuff. Are you done with Hollywood because of
No,
this
I
specific
mean,
reason?
I'm still working. I still, I haven't made the money necessary to do all of the other stuff. So I still have to go and do the chitlin circuit. I still have to do the job that I need to. But eventually, I've done what I set out to do, which was to redefine the universe. I've proven what I've set out to do, and that's why I have all the patents, whether they evaluate it or not.
And yet, for all the allegations and evidence, there remains a sense of disbelief among the public. How could someone so celebrated, so central to the cultural zeitgeist, have hidden this side of himself for so long? Part of the answer lies in the very nature of celebrity itself. Diddy's persona has always been larger than life, a master of reinvention, a mogul who built his empire on charisma and ambition. But as Tom Hanks so poignantly pointed out during his testimony, that charisma can be a double-edged sword. It's what drew people in, made them trust him, even admire him. And it's what allowed him to operate in the shadows for so long, shielded by the very fame that made him untouchable. As the trial unfolds, the question on everyone's mind is, where does this end? The legal consequences for Diddy could be severe, with charges ranging from racketeering to coercion. But the implications go far beyond one man. This trial has become a flashpoint for a broader reckoning within the entertainment industry, a moment of truth for an ecosystem that has long prioritized profit and power over accountability. How many others, like Tom Hanks, have stayed silent out of fear or complicity? How many more victims are out there, waiting for a chance to tell their stories? And perhaps most chillingly, how many of Hollywood's most celebrated figures have their own secrets waiting to be exposed? The courtroom drama may be unfolding in real time, but the impact is already reverberating far beyond its walls. Every day brings new revelations, new questions, and new outrage. And as we watch this saga unfold, one thing is clear: the world of glitz and glamour will never look the same again. So we ask you, our viewers, what do you think? How deep does this go? How many others are complicit in keeping these secrets hidden? Let us know in the comments below, and stay tuned, because the story is far from over.